Join us and see what life looks like from a medium's perspective. With Tracey Lockwood, the medium's medium. We'll explore the tools of psychic development, hear stories and experiences from the other side, and learn to listen to our natural intuition. Now, our host, Tracey Lockwood.
Hello, beautiful lights, and welcome to another episode of From a Medium's Perspective. For those of you that have video and can see, you know that I have a guest with me, but I'm not going to tell you about her yet because I need to do my shameless self-promotion. If you're interested in developing your abilities, either psychic or mediumship or channeling or spirit art or animal communication or whatever your interests are, I teach classes both privately, one-on-one via Zoom, which is how we're recording this show. And also, I teach it in group settings where you can join from wherever you live. They're live classes. I teach a 12-week certification program with 3 levels of certification that can be achieved dependent on your personal performance within that 12 weeks. And it's a group class. I do offer partial scholarships according to income. So if you're scared that you might not be able to do it, just come give me a call and then I'll talk to you about that and that possibility. I also teach group channeling and I also teach private classes. I have a 3-tiered mediumship program that is level 101, 102, and 103, beginning, intermediate, and advanced, that is privately taught. And in the 3rd level, I actually bring in people to practice on, and I'm there to help you develop your ability. So it's kind of unique training. If you're interested, you can find out more information at mediumtraceylockwood.com. So I know you're like, yes, Tracey, we know you're a teacher. And who is this person? Because we tuned in because we like the title. So anyway, before I tell you what her name is, I want to say that she's a highly educated lady. She earned her master's degree in social sciences with a major in human rights, which intrigues me because of some similar study I did, but that's her specialty. She's published 2 books already. Her first book was published, well, both were published in Sweden, 2013 and 2017. And both are about old Nordic spirituality. And the first one is about Nordic goddesses and a female empowerment perspective. And her second book is about the runes. So we'll talk a little bit about what all that is. And she offers courses in goddess power and women's self-empowerment. And she's working on a 3rd book, and that will be printed here in the US. And she's written articles for spiritual magazines, and she's one of the publishers of the Echo World here in Virginia. It's a magazine that's highly touted. She publishes that with her husband, who's been on the show. Michael Peter Langevin has been with us. And together they also run a marketing company, Langevin Axelsson Marketing. Oops, I gave you her last name. I'd like to welcome to the show, Sofia Karin Axelsson. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here, Tracey.
Thank you, thank you. I have an aunt from Sweden, and I can't tell you where she came from because all I know is she was with my uncle in India, and they had children, and it's
well, you must have it somewhere because you're the first person from the United States says my second name right, Karin.
My cousin's name is Karin. One of my 3 cousins is named Karin.
So that was well done.
Thank you very much. So you really, for our listeners, I know you like to snoop on our guests while the show is going on or afterwards. So I'm going to give you her websites. If you're interested in the magazine, you can go to the echoworld.com website and you can read it on there or subscribe. And if you would like to reach Sofia directly, you can find her on Blogspot, Sofia Karin Axelsson at blogspot.com. And Sofia is not with a PH. No. It is an F, Sofia, Karin, Karin, Axelsson.com. You'll find her. Anyway, she's on Blogspot. So Sofia Karin Axelsson at blogspot.com. Well, you're here. We're finally got to do our show together. I'm so happy. And I just, I'm curious about both topics of your books that you've already written. The first one about goddesses and Nordic goddesses and feminine power, empowerment are really interesting to me. I read for someone and encountered Freya, and I don't know if she would be a Nordic goddess, but I was describing her and some cats that were around her too, and I don't think that's Sedna. I think that's the Inuit goddess.
Yes, it is.
Oh, is she? Oh my God, she's the girl.
Good at this.
So anyway, so I'm just curious because a lot of times we hear about the Nordic or Norse gods, Odin and Thor, and yes.
Well, it's interesting you would mention Freya, because I thought about if I would introduce any goddess specifically today, what would that be? And that would be Freya, actually. Yes, so yeah, you were right on that one. Very good. What can I say about the goddesses? I think you were kind of hinting at it, that often when we hear about old Nordic mythology, we often hear of Odin and Thor and Faye perhaps, or Tyr, and they're the big ones, pretty macho. Which is the main reason I wrote the book I thought that the goddesses had been a little put to the side and needed to.
What happened in your life, though, that made you interested in that? Like, how did you find out about the goddesses in your life? What was the contact with goddesses?
That is a good question. It's a pretty long answer, but I try to abbreviate it best I can.
We've got time.
But I started working with magic a long time ago, and witchcraft. I call it witchcraft, and I call it that because I don't want to ride on any high horses. Let's just call it what it is. That's what I do. Also, to call yourself a witch is pretty fun because you can do almost anything you want.
With ritual, or yes.
But when I started, when it came to mythology, I was very, very eclectic and very eclectic in who I worked with, what kind of entities I worked with. I still am. I'm open
me too.
all kind of mythologies and very, of course, right? And interested and think it's very fun. But somewhere along the line, the goddesses started calling to me, more or less. And maybe that was because I was living in Sweden. I cannot really say why, but they started talking to me specifically and more or less asked me to concentrate on us for a little while. Concentrate on the Nordic mythology. See if you can understand that one better. And once I started doing that, I realized that not only was it a really beautiful mythology to delve into, not better than any other, but very fun. It was also very close by, but by learning more about a specific mythology and a specific cosmic web, I guess you could say, it was actually easier for me to relate to others. Rather than just picking and choosing a little here and there, I got to know a whole system.
Yeah,
And that was very helpful for me.
Yeah, I think like as a medium, one of the things that I really advocate is people to connect to their guides and goddesses and angels and totems and all of those other energies, because I feel that in the process of discerning them, that it develops their ability to be more specific and accurate with spirits as well. You know, there's sort of like a segue into spirit communication. A lot of spiritualist traditions sort of skip the guides, and nothing wrong with that. You can go directly into that, into spirit work, you know, connecting with spirits direct. But I like it. I really like it. And I feel like it is very amazing to people to realize that we're not alone, that we actually have specific people, some that are our inner band, don't change, and some we share, like the gods and goddesses,
exactly,
with other people. So when you experienced the first time, what was your first personal encounter? How did that happen for you?
I don't know how to explain this really, but I will do my best.
Okay.
I don't think it was one specific personal encounter. I think it was more that I started to open myself up for the Nordic mythology and the goddesses by showing interest.
Okay, so your interest grew their energy. That would
exactly.
That would
I
make
opened
sense.
up by showing interest, by learning about them, and suddenly I started to realize that, oh, I'm thinking about what Freya may be, and she's telling me. That kind of came along the way. I'm encountering this goddess in my dreams who seemed to be in a winter landscape and seems pretty fierce. Oh, yeah, right. There's a goddess named Skadi. So
say her name.
Skadi or Skadi.
Okay.
If you say it in Swedish or Icelandic. So it came both ways. My interest, I think, maybe drew them to me or opened me up for both at the same time, right?
Yes, it makes sense because I think it's sort of, even in quantum physics, they've shown two people think of each other, or one person does, instantly there's a link and a conduit of information. It's amazing to think that we can literally access any point in the matrix, in time, in space, in communication. It's really amazing.
Yes,
yes,
I love
that. Of course you did.
And what was really fun for me was to notice that some things I had read up on, and I got the images, and then I got more information. But sometimes I got information from the inside, or in my dreams, or in my trance journeys, and read up on it afterwards and realized that it was actually correct or written down somewhere. And that was a very fun confirmation for me to see that this communication really works.
Great validation, great validation. Because when people think about gods and goddesses or elementals or totems or star people, in the back of their head, they're like, am I just like making this up? But you don't, because just like the archetype of life that is in the tarot or reflected, there are signature energies of higher vibration, and they're real.
Yes.
So each person might see a certain facet, but they all link and overlap. I think that's fascinating.
It is very fun, and it was a very fun process. When I decided, I didn't exactly decide to write the book. I actually had a blog going, which another blog than I have now. And I wrote in Swedish, then now I have started writing in English. I just started doing blog posts about the goddesses, and I did some art projects about them. And after a while, I realized that, oh, I have a lot of material. Maybe I should put this together to a book.
Yeah.
But what happened was that I thought that I was kind of pick and choose what's going to be in the book. There was no question who was going to be in the book. They just lined up in my mind. I'm
Wow.
going to be in, I'm going to be in, I'm going to be in.
Wow.
9 all in all wanted to be in and have a chapter each. So I had to learn to know several goddesses rather deeply during this writing process and during my magic work under
So
this
extraordinary.
time.
What a great, like, that's so fascinating. Like, really a great experience.
It was a very great.
You'll never forget your encounters and your
Exactly. No, it was a very great experience, and also it gave me great respect for how many Nordic goddesses and how much they cover. We have everything from Hel, or Hela, you often call her here, the death goddess, to the goddess of youth, Eden, to Freya, who's the big mother goddess, but also the goddess of love and war, and Skadi, who's the winter goddess, etc., etc. And what I really like to stress with the Nordic goddesses is that regardless what pantheon, but if you do choose to work with this one, it's so fun to see that it's so many ways to be a woman or to think about women. It doesn't have to be this little square way that we all have to be this way. We can be so totally different from each other, and all is good and well. And we can also shift between different roles. And if we do that, and when we do that, because we all do that all the time, if we want, the goddesses can actually help us to feel a little more comfortable, maybe with a role that we are not so used to having. And if any of the listeners would like to approach the Nordic goddesses, I would approach anybody who feels good to you or you're interested in. But if you don't know where to start, Freya is a very good start. And I think she's good to work with for men too as well. But for women, one of the biggest gifts she has to offer is that she's both the warrior of love and war. And some people think that's a contradiction. But she really taught me that it isn't a contradiction. What you love, you have to be able to protect. And if you don't have a backbone, you can't protect what's really precious to you, including your own values and your own worth. So she's a very, very good goddess to start working with if you feel that you have to kind of learn how to get the war and the love together and learn to protect and value what you love and really put that out there.
Oh, that's a great connection, because just people within relationships, if they don't set appropriate boundaries, get hurt in love. And there are times to speak up. And I have a bit of martial arts training through my life, and maybe like 8 years or so of training. And one of the things I learned is that someone who's well versed at fighting, that first of all, you don't fight in anger. Second of all, you don't stand on guard, paranoid, worried about somebody attacking you, because you know that you have the skills necessary to take that up. And I was thinking about that relative to what you said, that link between love and war.
Yes.
And I think that I can't wait till you translate it. Oh my God.
Thank you. Well, is in the works, at least in my mind.
Yes,
been a little busy the last years, but I really would like to get there eventually.
Maybe somebody could ghost translate it for you, and then you could tweak it or something. That's really valuable. That was so valuable. The corollary, and I think there's a great deal of interest in the US about the Nordic.
I have actually gotten the impression that it is a great interest. I've seen a couple of books just newly published about Odin, for example, in the States, written by Americans. So there seemed to be a great interest in Norse mythology. And there are also groups here that work with Norse mythology, also through groups of different kind, but maybe they would need a little bit of an extra goddess touch as well.
I think that would be beneficial. Yes. from a long story for another day.
Yeah, let's not go there.
No. So from that book, is there anything else that you wanted to highlight, or do you want to shift gears? How do you feel?
Well, if you work, I would like to say this. I mean, I could talk about the goddesses forever, really, but if I go into one niche, we're going to sit here for 5 hours. So I just want to say something more general about them. That's something that I think you have to understand, not you, but certainly many of your listeners are used to this. But you have to understand that if you approach powers like the goddesses, you're going to change when you work with them. It's actually almost impossible to interact with them without changing into your core. So you also have to make wise choices when you work with them.
Yes.
Because they are energy patterns. They change you. They can change how you think, and you have to be ready for those changes. If you work with Freya and she shows you the warrior side, you have to be prepared to take the consequences of that. And the consequences may be that people get really pissed with you because maybe you say things that you usually didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to remember that a little step at a time, and be prepared to take the consequences of your energy actually changing, and maybe even your behavior changing, because they are strong, they are powerful. And one thing that I just love about the Nordic goddesses, well, I'm a little partial here, but is that they are not necessarily so smooth. They say it as it is. They always give you very, very strict advice.
Yes.
And they don't comfort you all that much necessarily. Rather, when I worked with them, they often just stood like this and said, yeah, you said you wanted this change, so what are you whining about?
Yeah, you asked for it. This is the way out. Did you not pack? Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. And I think part of that, it's, I teach people to connect with their guides around them, their inner band guides. And, a lot of people are like, oh, my master teacher, they're bigger and more important than the others. And of course they're not, because just like our chakras, every single one is important. But, like our joy guide and gatekeeper, he works very, very intimately with you and does care about the things like that. But your master teacher is looking over the course of lifetimes, multiple lifetimes. So you suffer, okay, it's not they're happy or suffering, they're not indifferent to that, but it's like the view is so large. And I think that as you get up with the goddesses and gods, that
similar things are
their perspective is so vast. And so they're going to give the shortest way out of Dodge. I think the same information would come through any personality, because truth is truth. But I think that the personality of the point of communication is very specific to the vibration of that. The information might be the same, but the way that it's delivered will be colored by the level of person and the purpose of that entity or being. And so, gods and goddesses, they've been around a while. They've earned that level of perspective. They've been through at some point in their life something quite similar, and they really don't have time for this. It's like, let's get her done.
Yes, that's exactly.
That's so cool. I'm so glad you brought that up. That's so interesting. Yes.
And important.
Yeah, they're not your pocket puppy.
No, they are not. They are anything but. I would like to say.
You work with energy also with magic, and also as, would it be fair to say you're a Nordic witch? Yes.
Oh, yes. I think that's a great expression.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you define that. I've had a few people that deal with magic and witchcraft talk a little bit about it? I'm curious what your perspective is about witchcraft per se, and because sometimes in the US it has such a negative implied connotation, and I know in your case that's not the case. And so I'm curious, how do you define being a Nordic witch, and how do you think about magic?
Well, if I start with the Nordic witch, is in one way is just a label. It's just, you say you're a medium, I say I'm a Nordic witch. Just
a way to just shortcut for the most
so people have it. Exactly, have a chance to know a little bit who I am and what I'm doing in a shorthand. It isn't really that important to me what I call myself. I just, this is convenient because it's the closest I have come to describe what I do. I also like the idea of witchcraft because it is a little rebellious. You can do a little what you want. Nobody can tell you that this is right or this is not right. And I always like that because that's how I like to explore magic. I don't want to follow traditions. I can learn from traditions.
Yes.
I can learn from guides. I can learn from goddesses. But I want to explore, and the experience of magic has always been the most important thing for me. For me, magic is everything. It's life. I don't talk about white or black magic because I don't think that's correct. It's a little bit like saying that the night is bad and the day is good.
Yeah, or all people are either good or bad. Yeah, it's
exactly.
Very separate, very dualistic.
There are magic that can be harmful, but I would like to talk more about that in that case, that there are ethics about how you use magic. And if you use magic to harm somebody else, it's going to bite you in the butt.
I was going to say the laws that govern that, So
that kind of works itself out.
Yes, if not in this lifetime, ultimately, yes.
Somewhere along the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to get very bad nightmares.
Yes, karmic responsibility, absolutely.
But magic for me is everything. It is life, it is the cosmic web, and it's how we move in the cosmic web. And magic for me is something totally natural. For me, it's actually more about becoming more natural than what society usually presents to us. It's about coming to a place where we can follow all our rhythms, and also align with the earth rhythms and the moon cycles, and just be more connected. I think that for me, magic ultimately is about communication. It's about communicating deeper with everything that we have around us, whether we see it or not. I always aim for coming to a place where I can shed off enough of my bag, my shadow bag, and be as much in the moment as possible and work with everything, all guides and all goddesses and what have you, to come to a point where I can just feel that I am really in the world in every sense.
Yes.
And when this really works, I can actually see a glow around everything. Yes. I can feel everything around me. And that's the glory of magic. You can work magic to attain certain goals, and that's all good and fine. You have to do the practical work, of course, also. But for me, I think magic is more a state of being. It is a state of being when you feel really magical. You feel you're in the cosmic web and you move with it. And nothing is more or less important. Everything has the same value in a magical world, at least for me. It is a very equal and natural system.
Yes. You know, everything that you said, I didn't even want to interrupt one tiny bit there, could be said about how I view mediumship. Because it is completely natural, and it is communication with the web and the cosmic design and matrix, and it is so natural, and it is such a natural part of our being. It isn't some special label that gets put on somebody. And I just love how you express that. I really, really did.
Thank you. And I really think that it doesn't matter really what we call it. You call it mediumship, I call it witchcraft.
Magic and witchcraft. Yeah. And I've had people say that I'm a witch. And although I've not studied or I don't do ritual, I've not joined a coven or, a group that focuses on that. I'm not a
You never danced around a fire in the woods?
I might have, but not butt naked. And I have friends that do, that do ritual, and I enjoy the solstice and the equinox ceremonies and the moon and all that. I don't do it all the time because my focus is somewhere else this lifetime, but I love the inclusion and the connection to nature, and I think it's grossly misunderstood, and sort of like other cultures are misunderstood,
yes,
by being defined by their very lowest and worst elements.
Of course.
That's often how witchcraft and magic are perceived, or mediumship is perceived. I remember my ex-husband was from Egypt, and we went there, and I noticed one of the people, like we went to one of his family's house, and I walked through the door and everyone pulled back, and I could sense they were afraid of me. And I was like, okay, I don't think I'm intimidating, but I am tall, but whatever. And they said that I asked my husband, not right at that time, and he said, oh, well, they heard about Jeffrey Dahmer and they thought that you were going to eat them. And I thought, okay, didn't even have them on the menu, much less in my mind for a dish at all. But those are those misperceptions about witchcraft and about magic and about anything that goes beyond what you see in front of your face,
yes,
or what you have been taught to think. And I think it's so important for people to feel and discern, not think, is it good or bad?
No.
But actually experience it. Like if it's done in a whole way, in a healing way, in a loving way, and a magical way, or a way that creates closure. I'm sort of blending our things together, that you can tell it's good. Like you don't have to be afraid of good. Do you know what I mean?
I understand exactly what you
mean. And also I like that you don't necessarily differentiate, that you see the full spectrum, and that's so important, to see the full spectrum. If you just see one end of the spectrum, the dark side or the light side or whatever, you're missing the entire picture. Because
absolutely,
balance is needed for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, I love that. Love you too. That's awesome. Wow.
And I think one thing that is good to remember with what you said, that just trying to experience it, is if you feel insecure when you have done anything, going to a medium or working with a certain kind of magic, or working with a certain magical teacher or spiritual teacher perhaps, all you really have to do is take the next day and feel, do I feel good? Do I feel strong? Do I feel inspired? Do I feel like I'm a little more? Or do I feel less? Do I feel a little drained? Do I feel weird or irritated?
Yeah, or scared. Any of the lower.
Exactly.
Yeah, yes.
All you have to do is observe what your own reactions are and where you end up, and be very, very discerning, as you
yes.
say. Does this make me feel good and inspired, or does this make me feel drained? And we can use that just in a regular life on what people we're spending time with.
Every day in every way. Absolutely.
Right?
Not just people, but choices that we make in
Of
our
course.
lives. Oh my goodness. Like we do it to ourselves half the
Mhm.
time. We're like, ooh, they really drain my energy. And I'm thinking, get out of the way. Like if you don't like it, move. You know, like
exactly. Oh, I feel so bad. Yeah, I just ate 3 ice creams in a row. Of course I feel a little sick. There's no mystery to this.
Yes, then don't do that to yourself.
No, exactly.
Yes.
And
It's
in one,
there to teach us. It's there. That's like our guidance, is to feel our way toward those things that are wonderful and feel better. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And in one way, I think magic work isn't so different really than ordinary life. The same rules apply. And once you start understanding, even though they look a little different, of course,
Yes.
work with spirits and goddesses, the
Mhm.
rules change a bit, but how you react to things are rather similar. And your own responsibility of where you're going with this is also very similar.
Yes.
If you invite bad spirits into your life, it's not going to work so well. If you invite bad people into your life, you're going to be irritated a lot.
Absolutely. And the motivation, it's your motivation. Are you power hungry? Do you want to control someone else's will? Do you want someone in your life that just fills a position because they're a warm body and you want that husband or wife, you know, to just be in the house, but you ignore the fact that they're not really, you know, not really there. You can't, like, they're not Play-Doh, they're people, you know, so yeah.
No, we're all on different levels. We want the easy way out. We can be lazy. We can be a little thoughtless. There can be all these levels. But those are the levels we have to work with. And instead of sitting there saying, oh, I feel so drained after spending time with that person. Well, yes, maybe it's time to change the relationship.
Just maybe.
Or end it.
Exactly. Let me ask you how, like, your second book was on runes. So tell us a little bit, like, how did you get into the runes? Why did you write the book on runes? And how do you use, or if you use runes in your daily life?
I don't use it in my daily right now. So they're kind of there all the time. But the reason I wrote the book is actually similar to that of the Nordic Goddesses book. That I thought that there are a lot of good books on runes in Sweden and in the States, but I kind of thought that they chose to exemplify the runes with the same myths. And there was a lot of Odin and Thor and Tyr, and here we go again. So I wanted to highlight other parts of Nordic mythology that was a little bit more embracing, because there are a lot of wonderful, really queer in Norse mythology that I wanted to bring in. And I also wanted to write a book where people didn't feel that they were scary or mystical, but something that anybody can work with. How far you go is of interest, and it's no matter how deep you work with them, but you don't have to be so serious about it necessarily. They are powerful, but you can still play with them. It doesn't have to be carve them in bone and blood.
Tattoo them on your body. Yes.
You can draw them in glitter, and that's perfectly fine. And that's the kind of angle I have when I write about them. I just wanted to make them very, very approachable.
They're symbols. Do you think of them like energy signatures, like sort of a short for different energies, or?
Definitely I do. In one way, I think about them as a map of the world, that in one way, all the energies in the world kind of encapsulated in these 24 signs. And I think that's true for any magic. So you can just start imagining how much is in every rune. But you can also take that one rune and concentrate on this part of that massive power and try to understand that one better. They are magical signs. You can learn a lot through them. You can also work with them because they are energy structures. A lot of people use them for divination. I can do that, and I have done that, but I think it's much more fun to work with them magically. I draw them when I need them, and I can draw them in the air, and I can draw them in the earth, and I can draw them in my mind, but I rather work with them and use them to focus a certain kind of energy.
Yeah.
That's usually how I work with them personally.
Yeah, well, symbols, I think of, like, I always go back to mediumship because that's my,
of course,
thing, you know, but I think of it like, let's say in a dream state, we're out of our body, our physical body is resting, our brain is asleep, and recharging, sort of like your battery on your cell phone. And our consciousness, because it's eternal, is not in the body. So we're communicating with other people back home in the, the summer lands, and traveling and, all this stuff, going to school, maybe serving as a guide or whatever for somebody. And then as we come back, those experiences that we have that are genuine contact experiences that we have, because it's so physical here, as we get into the physical world, they get kind of compressed into symbols and pieces that are like a code to remember the lessons and the connections, and hence dream interpretation, etc. And so I feel like the runes must be something like that, at that encoded level.
Yeah, I think
that's huge truths that are universal. And
I think that's a very good way of describing them. I often think of them as portals.
Oh, yeah.
That you can walk through them, which is actually exactly what you're saying, but the other way around.
The opposite direction. Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting.
You can use them to walk through them to find that specific part of this energy pattern, this way of describing the cosmos. That's a very effective way of working with them, and anybody can find the rune roll online if they're interested and want to know what they look like, and then you can just get the general code words.
Yes.
And what anybody can do is choose a rune that they're interested in, learn what it looks like, and just a basic understanding, and then you can actually meditate on the rune, and you will get massive amounts of information. If you're not totally blocked or afraid, I bet you.
And that's what blocks us at any level of existence and dimension, is fear.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that can be overcome.
Yes. And again, like you said, connecting with the resonance of healing and happiness and goodness.
Exactly. And this is a very fun way of starting working with the runes, to see if they suit you.
Yeah, which I was just thinking, which one resonates. That's very interesting. Well, I hope you translate that book too.
Thank you.
Because I'm waiting. Okay. And as soon as you do, we'll link it below too. But anyway, anything else about the runes that's in your mind that you want to share?
I think the most important for me about the runes is that they are truly accessible for anybody who feel interest in them.
Yes.
They really are there. I mean, they're just energy patterns. Anybody has the right to approach them if they feel so inclined. I think it's good to read up on runes as much as you can, but I also think it's very important that you do your own trance journeys on each one, because every individual is going to get a little bit of a different layer, and you're probably going to get the layer that you need to know right now. So if you choose to work with the rune of joy, for example, which is a pretty easy way of starting, some people will probably get messages about, I have to bring more joy into my life. But some people might get messages about the risk of letting getting lost in not joy, but superficial things. And it's person might get
externalizing your happiness. Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
And a third person might get a message that is about our elves, our green people, because they are also part of that room. So it's a very good way to work. And if you do want to work with them, journey on them, do trance journeys, meditate on them. And if you have the chance, write it down, because when you do it half a year from now, it's going to be totally different than the first time. And that's how you learn about the runes, and that anybody can do. It's really open for anybody who's interested.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's really beautiful. You're working on a third book. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us anything about it, or is it secret?
Well, I don't think it's a secret really, but I did hear an author say, if you want to get a book written, don't talk too much.
Don't talk about it,
because you never write it. And I have actually taken that to heart, and it's, I don't think I'm paranoid about it, but
it's like a germination.
To overtalk something. The one thing I can say about this one is that I said, when I met my husband, I said, I don't talk to dead people. That's just not my thing.
Yes.
Totem animals, goddesses, what have you, fine. Absolutely. I don't talk to dead people.
Yes.
And then they started to talk to me. And I thought, oh, so it's actually ghost stories. It's a classic kind of twist of the classic ghost stories.
So an evolution of your personal journey, but making it accessible.
Yeah, and what they have taught me, and how I have seen my way.
Oh, very good. Yeah, and I think that is going to be critical, and I'm so interested, and please let me know when that gets published, because I would love to have you back to talk about that.
Thank you.
Sincerely. But yeah, it's really important to present that process from as many different angles as possible. And we'll leave that as a mystery right now. But
we'll leave it there.
That's really interesting. So yeah, so you are fluent in 2 languages, right? Like,
well, my English is okay.
Oh,
I guess it's fluent.
Just fine.
But let's say, as a publisher, a co-publisher of a magazine, I'm learning a lot of English every day. So, but to have 2 languages is and to work actively with 2 languages is really important, because I love stories, and I love storytelling, and I love writing. It is fun for me to compare, and I know this is not a new thought at all, but it has become more apparent to me that how we see the world and how we categorize the world is very bound up with our language.
Yes.
It happens all the time that I'm saying to Michael, do you have a word for this and this and this? And he says, no, we don't have that word. And I think, you should.
Right.
But it's the other way around, of course. There are also expressions in English that are so neat, so good, that we don't really have.
Don't really equate, yeah. Well, and you have a third language, which is magic.
True. That's true.
That bypasses any language barrier.
Yeah, that's true.
At all, but it is a language, and the runes are a language.
Yes, absolutely.
A spiritual language. You know. Oh, that's so cool. So, is there anything else that you would like to touch on that you thought, well, Tracey, why didn't you ask me about this? or that you thought, oh, I want to say this before I go. What
yes, this, because you mentioned that I published The Echo World, I just really want draw people's attention to
Tell
that.
them, tell them, I know it's a magazine and it's got a really super cool title, The Echo World, which just,
yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it?
But tell us a little bit about what
so
the magazine is.
It's a spiritual alternative magazine that is published in Virginia in print, but you can also find it online. And why I want to draw people's attention to it is because I really do feel very proud of it, and I feel it's a good alternative spiritual voice that is much needed. I'm also drawing people's attention to it because we're always interested in to know what people think of it, if they want to submit articles, and this could be very interesting for your readers if they are writers out there who want to be published. Maybe this could be maybe this could be something to check out. Because that way we widen our scope as well. So it is a labor of love. So I really think people should take the time to check it out. We have so much great material in it.
And you said the website for that is theechoworld.com.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really am just delighted that you came on the show. I love your energy and appreciate your expertise also. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely.
Thank you. And for listeners, remember Sofia Karin Axelsson at blogspot.com if you want to find her on Blogspot, and theechoworld.com, as we just mentioned there too. And for our listeners, remember, it's never inappropriate to be kind, and without integrity, you have nothing. See you next week.